Seton Hall 25-26, undersized, overlooked, outgunned. But if everything clicks, this crew could rob the Big East blind. No 7-footers, no problem. Let's vibe. What's up, Pirate Nation? I'm Brian Webster, your host of Pirate Vibes, the home of Seton Hall basketball on the Big East Energy Network. We are sponsored by Asabasa Spice, flavor of plenty with Asabasa Spice. Throw it on your steak. It's Father's Day weekend. Get it. Enjoy a nice steak. You won't regret it. Today, we're going to go a little deeper. I'm riding solo, as you see. Patrick isn't here this week. The question on the table is, can a small Seton Hall team compete in a conference that is traditionally a big, powerful, physical, bruising Big East? Because you look at this 25-26 Pirate team, and you see what do you see? You see that there are no big names, a bunch of small school guys, no McDonald's All-American big, no dominant 7-footer. But you see a collection of guards, wings, guys that seem to have a lot of energy. This is definitely a small ball roster. And in a league where size is still very, very, very evident and very, very part of its culture, let's walk through the facts and see, historical and present, and see if this small ball roster, because it seems like we're at our limit with roster, and can it work in the Big East? And I think it only could work if everything clicks. So let's kind of dive back, right, with the historic. Let's look over the last 15 years, small ball teams that were successful in the Big East, because it has been successful in the past. We look at the 11-12 Louisville Cardinals, right? Final Four run. Average starter height was 6 feet 4.5 inches. Pretty dang small. Their backcourt had Peyton Siva and Russ Smith and Chris Smith, all guys who were 6'2" and under. But they forced 18.3 turnovers per game. They were top 5 in a defensive efficiency. So the lesson here from Louisville is, if you can't be tall, be disruptive. Let's go to another team, a team that we know a little bit better, right? The 15-16 Seton Hall Pirates, the Big East Tournament champs. Whitehead and Carrington were in the backcourt, 6'4", 6'3". Only one true real big, and Delgado really wasn't there yet. He was 6'9". They won the Big East Tournament. We remember that run. You can win big with guards who control the game. So if you have to be disruptive on defense, you need guards that can control the game. Let's move over to Xavier in 22-23. No dominant center. Their big guy was 6'9". They were more finesse than force. They relied on their 6'3" guard, Kunkel, the 6'4" guard. They were top 10 nationally in effective field goal percentage and offensive efficiency from KenPom. So a lesson here is, if you space the floor and shoot, you can outscore size. And then obviously we know Nova, right? Nova, the glory years of Nova. It seems like they're in the past now. We got to throw our shots at Kevin Willard when we can. Excuse me. Since 2016, they've only played with 2 centers over 6'9". So small ball is a thing with Villanova. They averaged less than 3 blocks per game, but still made Sweet 16s in 2021 and 21-22. So intelligence, spacing, discipline can replace the brute force. So looking at those 4 good examples, successful teams, you need to be disruptive on defense. You need to have guards that can control the game. You need to be able to space the floor, and you shoot a little bit. And you got to be smart. You got to be heady. You got to be disciplined. So the elite point guard play, right? We need that. Bud Clark, the transfer from Merrimack, seems to be the guy. He's in all the social media posts for their practice, um, arriving to the dorms and the gym. And Bud Clark is the guy that really the social media darling. He averaged nearly 20 points and 6 assists at Merrimack last year. He was a 2.5 assist to turnover ratio, 2.7 steals per game. Is he undersized? Yeah, he's 5'10. But his speed and his IQ are exactly what you need to run a small ball attack. Now, it'd be nice to have a second guy to go along with him, and we might have that in Trey Parker, or maybe even Felton can fill in the gaps. But we need elite point guard play. We need those guards to control the play. Then you go down to shooting. The shooting threats on the wing, you need shooting. We talked about it with Nova, and we talked about it Xavier a little bit, and then you need to be efficient, right? Trey Parker was pretty good from three. He's a scorer. Felton was a good three-point shooter in high school. He has potential to stretch that team. AJ Staten McCray, the kid from Miami, was a 34% career shooter at Stanford, including his final season in 23-24. He shot 41%. So he might be a slasher with a corner three value, something that we did not have last year, because Seton Hall only shot 31% from three last year. Think about that, 31%. That is atrocious. I want to say if they can hit 36 to 37% as a team, everything changes, right? Spacing opens up. Driving lanes for Bud Clark opens up. Or any other elite guard, Trey Parker, right? The defense gets scrambling because they're trying to close out on every single guy. So we need shooting threats from the wing. Then we go to defense, right? You have to be smart and you have to be physical and you have to be aggressive on defense. Jacob Dar, right? 6'5". He played center in high school, but he has got a wing body. If you look at Jacob Dar from his days at Rice last year, he's definitely a wing. He's definitely a wing, but he's got to use some physicality there because we are undersized. Elijah Fisher, another one, right? Coming out of high school, he was listed as a 2 or 3. You look at the depth charts from all the Twitter experts, and right now Fisher's kind of pegging in at that 4. Could be that starting 4. But he's got to be strong, and he's got to be able to guard anyone between the 2 and the 4. Felton and Stan McCray, like I said, they're long wings. They have to be able to cover ground. They have to be able to close out. The Big East has killers. You need guys that can switch on them. This roster has the length and the motor enough to do it if they stay locked in. They have to be successful all the time. Then the interior defense has to be solid without size, right? You got God's Will, who's 6'8", 6'9", 6'10", depending on where you're looking at. Long arms, good timing. He can block shots. The new guy from Oklahoma State, Patrick Sumanek, 6'8", was at West Virginia. He's been around the block. He's a senior. He's a super senior, really, because he got the JUCO transfer. Got that thick body, put back, can be an interior presence, but we need to see that. We need a guy like Patrick Sumanek to come off the bench and just provide that brute force. Same thing with Stephon Payne, right? More size and skill, but if he can give me 10, 15 minutes a night, the defense will be fine. That toughness inside. Combined between those three, God's Will, Sumanek, and Payne, they have to have 20 rebounds in a night. They have to have a block or two, right? And they have to stay out of foul trouble, because if you're not deep at the bigs, soon enough, Felton's going to be playing all 5 positions. And then the fifth thing is you got to have bench production and intangibles. TJ Simpkins, perfect one. He's a scoring guard. He's got to be a microwave. He's got to heat up quick, right? Then Stanton McCray, he's going to have steals, right? Defensive guy, deflections, momentum plays. He's got to be able to capitalize. Fisher, if he comes off the bench, he needs to provide rebounding and provide defense, like I said, between the 1 and the 4. In small ball systems, rotations matter more. Depth equals survival. Can this roster put this together? That's the question we have for Shah and his staff. Is this roster capable of coming in, night out? This roster fits his mold of wanting to have a deep roster and maybe not no star driven. This roster kind of fits that. I'm drinking the Kool-Aid. I don't know if you are. But I think if everything clicks, this team could be pretty solid. And when we come back after a short break, we'll take a look at the path forward, right? We'll kind of go through the roster once again and kind of what can we expect and what has to go right for the Seton Hall Pirates to be successful, and then a final word. Welcome back to Pirate Vibes, where we're talking about small ball today. Does size matter? The age-old question, does size matter? We got the news this week that rev share is coming to town, so everyone's going to have money, right? It's not going to be based off your boosters as much. You're going to have money, and the basketball schools might have an advantage for a short period of time before the system changes once again. So do we take advantage of that and use the full 15 roster spots? We talked about in the previous segment that depth equals survival. Do we try to figure out the last 2-3 spots? I don't know if Hassan Mbe is on the roster. He was with the team for last year, but I don't know if he's taking a scholarship spot. The kid from the Patrick School. And do we go to the full 15? Do we go add 2-3 guys just because we can? It came out this week that Shah has the full support of the school to go to the full 15 if they want to. It is budgeted. But do you bring a guy on just for the sake of bringing on a guy? Or do you find a high ceiling guy that, can hang around a year or two, a Felton, a God's will, some guy that will buy into the culture and develop? And then, then you fill in the pieces with your transfer portal guys. Is that the way to go forward with the full 15 in this rev share model? I don't know. We're going to figure it out. I'm sure I'm going to have some guests on. We'll discuss rev share at nauseum before the season because it is the hot topic of college basketball. But let's talk about what has to happen with what guys we have right now. Right? We talked about Bud Clark needs to be an elite point guard. He needs to be a personal Shah, right? He needs to be someone that, guess what, guys? Jump on my back. I'm going to take us to the promised land. He's a tough Philly guard. He went to Merrimack. He put up the numbers. He's taken a step. Patrick Madden last week kind of hinted that maybe this is his step before he takes the next step. I don't think so. I think he fits this perfect system. And if he has a good year and the team is on the rise, I think you see Bud Clark coming back next year. Even if St. John's comes and tries to throw a ton of money off him like he's where do you want to go? Some other conference rival that St. John's is always trying to pry with their money. Then you go to Trey Parker, the kid from NC State. Kid can jump out of the gym. The kid can play offense. Can he play defense? We don't know yet. Can he produce night in, night out? He did gain minutes as the season went on at NC State, even though the coach was losing his job and it was publicly known. Trey Parker continued to increase his role, so he gained the trust of that coach. Can he gain the trust of Shah right off the bat? I have Jasim Felton pegged in as our small forward right now, which is kind of crazy because a lot of people are listening to Elijah Fisher, and we'll go through that. But right now, I got Felton. I drank the Kool-Aid when Patrick was talking about it last week. I think he is a perfect example of what Seton Hall has to do, what Seton Hall has to turn into when it comes to having guys that buy in, that have a high ceiling like a Felton and God's will, that will develop their role, and then you can add guys to it. Missouri is the perfect example, right? Missouri, I've talked about this in previous episodes. Missouri was terrible in the SEC 2 years ago. They kept a few guys. It wasn't their top scorers, but they kept a few guys, and then they added all guys in the transfer portal, and Missouri was a top 25 team in the deepest conference in the country. I'm not calling that with Shaw, right? Because I think the Big East is a little bit more traditional. You have to take the steps. You can't go from bottom to first so quickly. I think there's a lot of good cultures, but guys like Felton and Godswill can help build this culture. And then you add a guy like Bud Clark, who I think fits perfectly. Then at power forward, right now I list Jacob Dar. I know some other people have Dar at the small forward and then Fisher at the power forward. I have Dar because I'm starting to drink the Felton Kool-Aid. Right? I think Dar's going to play a pivotal role. Heck, I had a whole episode as soon as the week he came, Dar as a star, right? So I'm fully bought into that one. Then at center right now, it's Godswill. It's got to be G-Dubs, right? G-Dubs brings the energy. He stayed when he probably could have left. He stayed. So I think he's a perfect fit for this system. He's a little undersized, but that's okay because he could jump out of the gym, and as long as he brings some physicality and some toughness down low, because he's got two bigger guys. And when I'm saying bigger, he might be taller, but thicker guys, Patrick Sumanik and Stefan Payne, right? So Payne, like I said, is a traditional big that will play in spot minutes, I feel. Sumanik is kind of the same guy. If you look at Sumanik's highlights and throughout his career, especially at Oklahoma State, it was all putbacks and at the rim, 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 and that's what we need. Elijah Fisher, right? A big physical wing. He's got to be able to score a little bit. He's got to take that Texas Tech mentality, that defense first mentality that Texas Tech is famous for, and be that guy on defense if he starts or comes off the bench. Staten McRae and Simpkins we talked about got to be a microwave. So for success to happen, Clark has to become one of the best top 3 point guards in the Big East. Is that a reach? Maybe. Is it possible? Without a doubt. With Shah as his head coach, Clark kind of plays similar to that. I think Shah can lead them. I see them building. First of all, he signed real quick, right? As soon as the portal opened up, guess what? We had a guy and we're like, what? What's going on? Like normally we're asleep at the wheel. Clark came in. It seems like they've created a relationship, Shah and Clark, and it could be Bud's season. So he has to become a top 3 point guard for this team to go right with small ball. The team has to shoot, and I mentioned this before, has to shoot 36% or higher from 3. They cannot shoot 31% and struggle on offense. They have to have driving lanes. If you're going to be a small ball team, you got to be able to spread, and you got to make that defense, this defense tread out there, right? They've got to be closer to the closeout. If they don't care if the guy in the corner is open, it shuts down everything else. You have to hit your threes. That means Dar. That means Simpkins. That means Staten McRae. That means Elijah Fisher. That means Felton. That means Parker. That means Bud Clark. They have to be guys that the defense respects. Number 3, the defense has to rank within the top 50 nationally in terms of efficiency. They have to be a defensive team. If they can be a defensive team, everything else will work out. Number 4, we didn't talk a lot about this, but we talked about it with the bigs, but team rebound and effort is consistent. We do not have a Dennis Rodman out there. We get it. Payne might be the closest to the traditional big that likes to grab rebounds. But we do not have a top rebounder in the league. It's fact right now. I hope I'm wrong. I hope in 8-9 months we're talking about the season. We're going, man, that guy came on strong, and man, can he rebound. But we have to have team rebounding. We have to have team rebound. We have to win the rebounding battles, even though we're undersized. We've got to consistently close out on defense. The defense possession doesn't end until the rebound happens, right? The stop really doesn't count until the rebound happens. We can't let the cheap putbacks because that'll come back and haunt you. So rebound is definitely one of the top 5 things. And then number 5 is injuries to the front court. We talked about how we're thin on the front court. There's a thin margin of error there. We cannot be hurt on the front court players. That's Payne, that's Sumanik, that's God's will. That's probably Elijah Fisher as of right now. I listed Dar as the power forward. Like those guys, the bigger guys, the guys that you're relying on to get the 5, 6 rebounds, 4, 5, 6 rebounds a night, have to stay healthy. Because if you try to team out there where Felton's your power forward, you're going to struggle. Simple as that, especially in the Big East. And I know it's not the Big East of the 80s with Patrick and Mutombo the back in the day. But there's still bigs out there, right? You just saw the last couple of years, Cockburner and Klingon dominating down low. You've got to have guys that rebound. When you take on UConn, you have to be able to rebound. If you let Reed and Caravan get all the rebounds, you're not going to win. Simple as that. But those guys have to stay healthy. The big meaty ones have to stay healthy. Now, if Shah goes out there and fills the full 15 like we talked about and gets 2 more bigs, now we got some depth there. Okay, you can afford an injury. We're not room for injury, by the way. The Pirate Vibes does not condone and wish injury on anyone. But you can have an injury or 2 during the season, which obviously is going to happen, but the bigs have to stay healthy for success. So what has to go right? Clark becomes a top 3 point guard in the Big East. The team can shoot threes to create the driving lanes. The team's got to play defense. Got to improve on defense. It's not just about heart and hustle, which is what kind of you hung your hat on last year with the 7-win debacle. It's got to be effective, efficient defense. You've got to make stops, not just, man, he closed out real hard. No, you've got to make stops. The team, number 4, the team's got to rebound. Number 5, you got to stay healthy. Small ball can work, but you've got to hit all those. You can't not shoot 36% from 3. You can't not be able to be a good team rebounding team. You can't just be an offensive juggernaut. You have to be defensive for small ball to work. So I guess my final word is, can the Seton Hall team compete? Yes. But it's going to take laser focus. There are going to be no shortcuts, which I know Shah won't let them have shortcuts. There's going to be no coasting, which I know Shah's not going to let them coast. They all got to buy into that culture that there are no bad nights. Small ball in the Big East is like walking a tightrope in a windstorm. You can pull it off, but every detail has to be perfect. Shah's identity fits this style, right? Small ball is underdog mentality that screams Shah. There are no egos that scream Shah. You got to play hard defense. Shah. You've got to move the ball. Shah. Accountability at a high level. Shah. So if Bud Clark grows up fast, if the wings commit on defense, if the bigs stay out of foul trouble and stay healthy, they can win games in February that no one sees coming. They can go to maybe Omaha and knock off Blue Jays. They can go up to Milwaukee and play with Shaka. And just maybe, if all these things happen and the growth continues to happen, you might see them dance in March. I know that's a big leap from the 7 wins, but I'm really drinking this roster. Last year, it felt like coming off the NIT, you kind of were like, we'll figure it out. Dose of reality last year with the 7 wins, 2 wins in the conference. But I really believe that this roster has been constructed for that underdog mentality, for that no egos, for that hard defense, for that ball movement, for the high accountability. I think you have a star in Bud Clark, a budding star, if you will. So maybe, just maybe, size doesn't matter. All right, guys, that's the latest episode of Pirate Vibes. I'm Brian Webster. Make sure you follow me on Twitter and Instagram at Pirate Vibes 89. And hey, Seton Hall basketball is just a vibe.
Ahoy there! Ahoy, me hearties!